Welcome back, everybody, to PAX Prime 2015. We are in Group B in day number 2 of the One Nation of Gamers Summer Circuit. My name is Froday, and I'm joined by Monk, and we're going to continue the day with more Hearthstone card slinging action, as we have seen a lot of the great TGT cards in action. I can't wait to see more.
Yeah, saw some great play from both these players. Trump especially really impressed me with his new decks, especially that Control Warrior, which I think will do pretty well against Pavel's lineup. Control Warrior against Patron, this new Control Warrior with a lot of threats against the Handlock. Pretty good.
Hoy versus Trump was also very engaging. It was definitely my favorite series so far. I also really like some of Kalento's games, but I think Trump versus Hoy was my favorite series if I had to pick just one so far.
Yeah, Kalento's games seemed a lot more one-sided. He was basically putting on a clinic. Not really too much back and forth, just kind of too much domination in that sense. Trump's games, they're really more exciting. We got to see Trump really struggling, but at the end, he kind of pulled it through.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter how you start, it's how you finish, right? And Trump was telling me, too, that he really wanted to advance in first place, not just for, decisive victory and also his ranking standings and, GoSu Gamers and other websites, but also because he wants to avoid Kalento in the semifinals. The first seeds can't play the other first seed. So if he gets in first place, then he'll avoid it. And if Pavel gets first place, he'll be avoiding Kalento as well. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we have coming up on stage. We have the winners match, Pavel versus Trump. Pavel comes from Russia, and he has never really traveled outside of the country except for now. And this is his first time venturing into the United States. He's a young kid. He's 17. Trump's been around. He's in his mid-20s. And I'm looking forward to see how these guys clash, especially with their style of decks. It seems like they're pretty different.
Yeah, Pavel seems to be more of like the... he's very smart. His first breakthrough into the scene was actually with Control Priest. He was kind of the guy playing Control Priest at the top of the European ladder all the time, and he was spreading it all around. Possibly the one of the only Control Priest players at the very top. Since then, though, he's played a lot more standard decks. He's just kind of likes to brute force it, even though he makes some adjustments. Like, for example, with the Patron Warrior, there's still a lot of decks that he just likes to stay tried and true to. Warrior, Hunter, Warlock. It's kind of the metagame pre-TGT.
Meanwhile, Trump does have that Druid. We thought he brought Paladin, but that was a mix-up. A little disappointing on my end, because I would love to see more Paladin action. But alas, we will wait and see what would happen. As game number 1 is about to begin, Trump stays on the stage, having that momentum behind him. Pavel did get an opportunity to sit back, relax, and observe the entirety of Trump's decks. Pavel is playing the Patron Warrior, and traditionally speaking, the Patron Warrior struggles against the slower variant of the Warrior class. So hopefully we can see Pavel be able to navigate his way through and make it much closer, because sometimes it's very one-sided.
Yeah, the matchup is typically around 55% for the Control Warrior, but there are a few things that might make this a little better for Pavel. First of all, I believe Trump is only running one Brawl, and the double Brawl is really one of the things that swings the game around. Also, Pavel's decision to run 2 Loot Hoarders instead of 2 Unstable Ghouls also seems to kind of swing the matchup a bit, because you really want the cycling. That's more important than just the straight up extra damage from the Unstable Ghoul, or possibly the more defensive power from the Unstable Ghoul.
You think so? I think sometimes the Unstable Ghoul is also very powerful because of what it introduces. It gives you more power on the Throttling Berserkers, which oftentimes dropping 2 of them and going for the 48 damage combo is what you need to do.
Oh yeah, certainly. I think there's enough whirlwind effects. Oh, and at least Pavel has the Cruel Taskmaster, but there's probably enough whirlwind effects, and I've heard Zelay say on stream that you really only want 1 Unstable Ghoul if you're running it at all. Since then, though, his opinion has changed. It's just that running 2 Unstable Ghouls, you can't really use them both in your finishing combo if you get 1 Emperor reduction.
Fair enough.
It's a War Song for 2, the Frothing for 2, the Patron for 4, and then you can't really fit in 2 Unstable Ghouls off of that.
All right, well, Trump does not have any of his early game weapons. Those are what he'd like to see, so that way he can stabilize. Instead, pushes out the Sludge Belcher. Immediately gets challenged. Pavel can once again go for a Cruel Taskmaster. Although, let's see, if he plays a Throttling Berserker with it, he buffs it to 6 damage.
Strike.
Oh no, 7 because of the collide of the minions.
Yeah.
He hit Big Game Hunter immediately. Oh, man. And now he loses one of his primary win conditions. Just like that.
Yeah, and he also lets his opponent use a card that is typically dead in the matchup.
When it's also early game, too. So it's one of those things where maybe Trump
Armor.
like wouldn't have anything to do if this was the case. He probably played the Big Game Hunter just normally on the board. What really stinks too about this for Pavel is that I can completely understand his position. It's like, this is a tough matchup. I have to be able to be aggressive so that way I don't give him time to set up and drop big threats on me.
Yeah. It also speaks to like his deck building as well. Typically in Patron Warriors, you only see 1 or 0 Cruel Taskmasters. And the thing is, like, they're not really that useful, except for they're more useful for fighting on board rather than just using up in a combo. So he's definitely playing a more board-centric type of Patron Warrior.
Yeah. I think Cruel Taskmaster and Unstable Ghoul are equally good against aggro, so it's not really that one's tech specifically for like Face Hunter, the other's not. It just depends on the style, based off how he wants to go for his damage. Trump introduced with a couple of choices here. If he wants to set up a weapon so he can effectively take out the Gnomish Inventor and then just keep armoring up. He can also present Sylvanas and force his opponent to trade everything in. And Sylvanas will also gain a lot of life because of the Armor Smith.
I have no time for games.
So with this play, basically by playing the Sylvanas, he's not really threatened that much, so he can kind of afford to play the Sylvanas here, whereas I think Deathbite in general is slightly more versatile.
Yeah, I think also he doesn't want Deathbite to be caught by Harrison Jones, and then he has to play something pretty weak.
Do we know for certain if Pavel has a Harrison Jones? I believe he saw most of
Actually,
his deck.
you're right. He doesn't have Harrison Jones, now that I think about it from his list off of memory. He could have altered it, but I don't believe he has it. Maybe I could be wrong, though. I've seen a lot of Warrior decks lately, Mark. So, yeah, Baron Gen's not extremely powerful here because it doesn't immediately wipe everything with his end turn effect.
I wonder.
So we'll see the Deathbite. I don't know if Trump wants to play his second Armor Smith. I think armoring up accomplishes almost the same exact thing, although it does allow you to have a minion to challenge onto the board. The problem with Armor Smith on turn 8 is your opponent could be playing Patron and Warsong Commander, and then it would copy a bunch of Patrons, forcing you to Brawl when maybe you want to hold on to Brawl.
So is this enough combo pieces here? There's only 2 at the moment.
Well, if you count the Dread Corsair's extra damage, it is a combo piece. Also, what really is unfortunate is that you can't do Deathbite and the Emperor Thors in this turn, so you can threaten the Whirlwind effect the following turn. You're going to have to play Fiery War Axe.
Right. I think the big issue here is Pavel doesn't really have too many great options outside of that. He would ideally want to draw more cards, but when you're at full health and so much armor, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, you can't even Battle Rage for anything. It's quite amusing.
All right, very easy clear from Trump, and now he has the initiative, but what does he decide to do with the initiative? Oh, Acolyte of Pain is a very good draw, although he might be scared of some kind of Grim Patron combo from the Acolyte. Then again, it's just one Acolyte of Pain. It can't hurt that much, right, Dan?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. It also draws you more cards and you have a Brawl. If he goes for a Patron combination and goes all in with Whirlwind effects too, you have a Brawl and you have a lot more cards than he does. Not to mention, Baron Geddon sometimes might be able to clear by itself too. If everything is really weak, you just hit one of the Patrons and then, or you Baron Geddon and then clear everything else out.
What's also interesting is that Trump actually can clear off his own minions with the Baron Geddon if Pavel leaves them up for one turn.
True. Also true. Yeah, I don't mind dropping the Armor Smith here, again, for the same reasons. Grim Patron will do Grim Patron things whether or not you leave 1 or 2 minions here. I think the big challenge will be whether or not these minions will get buffed by a Frothing Berserker, but... Oh, okay, he has the second one. How much damage is this? Definitely not enough. He doesn't have a whirlwind effect. But he can draw a lot of cards from the Battle Rage. I'd be in favor for that. I think drawing cards with Battle Rage here would be the key. So War Song, Grim Patron, draw 2 cards? Oh man, that's actually a lot worse than I thought. Never mind. I thought he had the ability to at least draw 3 cards or more, but that's not that great.
Pavel obviously setting up for some kind of lethal here.
Yeah. And then that's where Harrison comes in. Harrison's a huge opportunity now because there's no whirlwind effects for Pavel at the moment. He also gains 3 armor.
Trump, even though he's in a decent position, a very good position, I might even add, he's still a little scared of what Pavel might have. That Death Spite attack to the face telegraphs a lot right there, where you've already have a Fiery War Axe equipped. You could very easily deal with this Acolyte of Pain on the board, or even the Armor Smith, but Pavel knows he has to win like pretty soon, or he's going to be in a really bad position.
Yeah, so now he's going to have to go with Plan B, drawing with cards. Good sequencing, killing Armor Smith first to reduce the amount of armor he's going to get. So this is 2 cards being drawn.
Not the best, but beggars can't be choosers.
Very poetic monk. Picks up a second Battle Rage.
Okay.
It's not too bad. Oh, he has no weapon to make this free. Ah, I forgot about that. The Dread Corsair costing 3 is pretty annoying. Dang. Also, this is the situation where I said Baron Geddon might be enough to clear and you can hold on to Brawl. You can Shield Slam and then just drop Baron Geddon and kill off the Warsong Commander.
Yeah. So typically you want double Brawl, number 1 to deal with the 2 sets of patrons, and number 2 to maximize your chances of getting that Brawl. But if he doesn't decide to Brawl here, that's still very viable. It may look inefficient, but I mean, look, you're the Control Warrior. You're going to win in the long game, and you have so many more cards than your opponent.
Yeah, not to mention that Pavel has probably drawn more than Trump because of those Battle Rage stuff. So even if he's drawn more, he has more cards. It's like he's just fighting so inefficiently on the other side as well. So Trump can afford to be inefficient because his opponent's being inefficient. So Pavel used up 1 War Song, 1 of his patrons, and 1 of his Frothings. I'm almost ready to say that there's almost no way for him to win, given that the fact that Trump has Shield Maiden and Shield Block, and still has like Brawl and even Alexstrasza to be aggressive or defensive. It just feels highly unlikely from this point.
Yeah, it just seemed like Pavel used so many resources in the mid game in the form of the Cruel Taskmasters to try to push for damage, and when that failed, Pavel had very little to go off of.
Yeah. I mean, Trump can be aggressive. He can Alexstrasza his opponent aggressively and do that, but I think it's okay also just to hit the Armor Smith with the weapon, play Varian Rin, let the Baron get and clear everything off. All of it's perfectly fine. Sludge Belch is pretty good. That's too bad. But also just a luxury thing. Justicar Trueheart is actually just representing like lethal at this stage.
It's like whatever.
So I guess, what do you choose to execute? You execute Varian? Just based off its soul damage. Oh, that's not bad at all. Oh, okay.
Not good enough, though.
Reasonable. He realizes that his chances of winning are very small. So Trump takes a very laughable game number 1. But that's what we were talking about in the very beginning. It can be a blowout, and oftentimes is. I'm surprised that you pegged it at 55%, because I feel like the 55% oftentimes is because the patron players are amazing, and they're really, really good. And I think the Control Warrior lists back then were also maybe not as good as they have become now. TGT introduced some really powerful tools for them to use.
Yeah, Justicar Trueheart being one of them, and even the Dragon Warriors are probably just a little bit better than the standard Control Warriors against the Patron Warriors even.
Sure. Couple interesting things too was that Pavel's deck is not that great against Control Warrior. I think maybe he's gearing it for better stuff in like the mirror and being able to win against other decks as well. So we'll go ahead and strike that off the board. Trump still has his Warlock and his Druid remaining. Meanwhile, Pavel will look to get onto the board. I wouldn't blame him for just queuing up Patron again and seeing what best he can do. But now he knows that Trump has that Handlock, that Demon Handlock, which is also really good against the Patron Warrior.
Yeah, interesting thing to note is that Handlock and Druid are actually two of the best decks against Patron Warrior. Handlock being something around 70% against Patron, and Druid being a surprising 60% against Patron ever since everyone started using Harrison Jones in a standard Druid deck.
It's also amplified by the fact that Druid's a lot more efficient at curving out now because of the Darnassus Aspirant. And as such, the only way that Druid could really fail is if it ended up not getting any curve whatsoever.
Oh, but this hand from Pavel is just sick, I would say. And Trump not even getting a little bit of help in his opening hand unless he mulligans everything. No really mind games here since both players know exactly what's in each other's decks, what kind of archetypes they are. It's interesting that Pavel's choosing to keep Lotheb here, but I guess it makes sense since your hand is already exactly what you want at this point. This matchup is around 55% for the Handlock player, even though I think most players would argue that Druid is favored. It's just that when Druid wins, it's such a blowout, and when Handlock wins, it often becomes a long and steady game. I mean, BGH or Keep of the Grove against a Mountain Giant or Twilight Drake, respectively, just almost feels like you've lost the game right there and then, and you want to give up.
I think what's also really challenging is the fact that you're always worried about combo, so having Lotheb at your disposal can stop it. So that way you can give some breathing room.
I agree.
Trump does get some early game help, but he also needs more than just ramp. He needs the answers. And things like the Twilight Drake and Mountain Giant need the silence and the big game hunter unless you want to preemptively place big threats. Ooh, speaking of ramp into big threats, Trump's got all three kinds of ramp in his deck at the moment.
Yeah, perfect for getting out that BGH early, or the Dr. Boom early. I'm already thinking about when Pavel will draw that BGH to counter Dr. Boom.
Probably the exact turn he needs it.
That's been a reoccurring theme in this tournament, actually. In fact, yesterday, Tom's final top deck against Dart, the anti-kill bot within the last half, saved him and actually got him into the playoff stage.
I see. It's pretty cool. Well, Trump does have Innervate, so that's a backup plan in case his Darnassus Aspirant dies. In fact, he's expecting it to die, so he can go ahead and Innervate it out next turn. But this does allow him to go for the coin Twilight Drake, force Trump to be able to reveal that he has the Keeper of the Grove, which he does not. Just kidding. He does. He has so. I made you guys think he didn't, right? Good job.
You tricked us for a moment.
That's right. You guys fell for my trap card.
My
Ah.
to you.
A lot of Yu-Gi-Oh references today.
Well, I mean, trap cards also exist in Hearthstone.
Forgot about that. Oh, there's the BGH. A little one turn too early, I would say.
Well, it still has the Ancient of Lore, and I think that might be just as good as Dr. Boom. Although Dr. Boom still presents a lot of swing opportunities because of the Boombot.
Yeah, with this play, if Pavel doesn't have the BGH, for example, or doesn't have any answers here,
Right.
oh, there's even the Siphon Soul. If he doesn't have any answers, then a Savage Roar top deck could just win the game right here and then.
Oh, that's a powerful Boombot. Yikes! That Azure Drake used to be a threat once upon a time.
Now
Until it met the Boombot.
now it's even worse than an Azure Drake.
Yeah, it's basically the same as this Big Game Hunter, exact stat-wise. All right, well, Ancient of Lore allows Trump to innervate Wrath and then pick up whatever the pieces this Boombot leaves. So first he can evaluate the Boombot, first he can draw, whatever he chooses to do. All right, Revenge Kill on the Big Game Hunter. Working as intended.
The Boombots always seem to kill the Big Game Hunter. It's just...
Yes. I agree with that sentiment. Let's draw first and see what Trump has in store. He can evaluate if he wants to Wrath this or if he can just trade it in. Maybe he saves Innervate for combo if he drew the exact 2 cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even a Savage Roar would probably lead him to possibly more likely keep that Keeper of the Grove on the field. But just in general, Keeper is pretty useless as an attacking figure, as something that you want to trade off, because all the handlock targets are basically have like 8 attack or at least 4 attack, and just way more health than the Keeper can actually deal with.
Too true. Too true.
So there's an opportunity for double Shade of Naxxramas, but that's so weak to Hellfire, so weak to Shadow Flame. Trump actually, that's really interesting. He's running the Aspirin and the Innervates and the Wild Growths, but he isn't going with the mantra of stacking 4-drops. He still has the Shades of Naxxramas in his deck.
Do you think Trump might reasonably Wrath for 1 to try to draw a card? Because his hand's very awkward.
Yeah, just cycling in this matchup is really important. I've heard from some pros that to be better at this matchup, you actually don't necessarily want to increase the number of BGHs in your deck. You just want to add more cycling. For example, running 2 Azure Drakes actually helps you a lot in the matchup. And in the modern Druid decks, everyone pretty much runs the double Azure Drake.
Druid of the Claw does allow him to hypothetically contest, but I think the Shade still feels better overall. I like the fact that he plays only 1, so that way Hellfire doesn't immediately wipe him off and give him no options for the following turn.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, Pavel's starting to get comfortable again. He doesn't also have to Hellfire this turn. He can Hellfire the next turn because Shades still only become 3/3. So this turn he can set up Ancient Watcher and Sludge Belcher instead.
That seems very strong. And now, I think for the first time in this game, Pavel is the one that has a board lead, a board advantage. And this is exactly what we see. It's going into a long game, and it does seem like the handlock has somewhat of an advantage. Trump is just not drawing into the exact things that he needs. Like, double swipe is all right, but he can't really burst his opponent down with double swipe when his opponent has such a huge board. It's actually pretty funny that Trump is the one with the situational cards in his hand, and Pavel is the one that has the consistent threats, where generally in this matchup, it's the other way around.
What to do?
Trying to imagine a scenario where Trump could reasonably set up 2-turn lethal, but everything involves him going super all in, and Pavel not having heal and taunt, which is exactly what he has. So Trump evaluating those options. The rope is burning halfway through on the board, signifying he has about 15 seconds left. Opting to go for silence, and is just going to charge. If he charges, he's hoping for a double swipe play the following turn, and that's where he's going to get punished, because if he goes for this and his opponent has heal and taunt, he is in trouble.
Yep. Unfortunately for Trump, it's exactly what he has. And he has that in spades. Yeah, just he not only needed a taunt, but he needed that exact taunt.
The Sun Fury?
Yeah, the Sun Fury. If Defender of Argus wouldn't have done it, it would be 1 mana over.
Although Antique Healbot by itself would still be okay, I believe. In fact, if he feels confident, he can Antique Healbot, Ironbeak Owl his Watcher, and just have a pretty intimidating board.
Yeah, it's true. Ironbeak and Healbot would also prevent him from not dying to Force of Nature. Yeah. Force of Nature
The problem is you're at 14 health, and your opponent's holding 5 cards for a long time. It feels like if you go up to 14, you might be tempting fate.
Okay.
Whoa! Talk about tempting fate. He is going really aggressive. That's pretty cool if he can get away with this.
He's not going to be able to get with this.
That's 2 swipes. That's 2 swipes to the face, and that's lethal. Trump ends up getting rewarded, but it's really funny because his play was not supposed to work out, and Pavel gets punished by an unlikely scenario of 2 swipes.
Yeah, typically in the matchup, you're really worried about the Force of Nature Savage Roar combo, that sometimes you can just forget that there's
2
actually
swipes.
that much direct damage in the deck.
He saw 2 keepers being used too, so he says he has to have swipe and the second swipe. He can't even have swipe and keeper.
Well, he was at 6 HP, right?
Yes.
So actually, that was really risky because he could have had swipe and the roots, right?
Oh yeah, Living Roots is also a possibility now.
Yeah, so I actually like it would make sense if roots didn't exist, but because there are like so many of those cards that deal direct damage to the face now, Trump could even be running 2 roots in his deck,
Yeah.
and actually he would have a really high chance of just winning straight there.
It's very optimistic to say the least. And the real key mark of a handlock player is always being able to, toe the line between looking like a fool and a genius. And in this case, unfortunately for Pavel, he looked very much the fool against Trump. He just completely gave away his opportunity to win the game because Trump would have to draw. You saw that he drew Savage War, but he'd also have to draw Force of Nature in order to begin having potential to win the game. But by then, Pavel had another turn to play minion, so maybe he has a second Sun Fury Protector finally with the Molten Giant, protects himself, and then you have to use combo to clear. Maybe that's Pavel's game to lose from that point on.
Yeah. Now Trump is left with his only remaining deck, his handlock deck. And Trump is a very good handlock player. You know how good he is? I was talking to Savitz one time, and he actually said that Trump is actually the best handlock player in the world.
Savitz said that.
Savitz said that, yeah.
Well, I'm inclined to
Credits.
believe whatever that handsome devil says.
Yeah.
So
Credits to Life Coach.
I will take credence to that call.
Credits to like Life Coach and a lot of the other great handlock players, but maybe Trump is the best. I actually told Trump that he said that, and Trump said, no, Savitz is wrong. I suck.
It's very humble of both of them because I think they're both fantastic handlock players. We'll see if it ends up becoming the case here. Pavel needs to win 3 in a row, and he picks what he interprets to be his best chance out of the 3 that he has.
That would be really sad. Patron Warrior against the handlock is your best chance?
It's one of Patron's worst matchups, and Trump does get a turn 4 play.
I greet you.
Mountain Giant is just problematic because you need execute on the spot or you lose in 3.5 turns.
Yeah, not only is it one of Patron's worst matchups, I'd argue that handlock, along with maybe Echo Mage, is Patron's worst matchup.
Yeah, it's just you try to put the patrons to flood the board or the Frothing Berserkers, you don't have to execute, you collide into giants or minions that can kill those said threats.
Yeah, it's one of those matchups where Trump doesn't have to be afraid of direct damage to his face. There's no like secret mortal strike tech in Patron Warrior. Although Reynad might come up with that someday.
Probably already has, and if he hasn't, you'll take credit for it anyways.
It's the slow and steady
He's
game
on a
here.
different floor, he can't hear me. Gnomish Inventor here to draw a card, which is important. I wonder if Pavel is even tempted to like hit this so he can get battle rage value. I like it.
There we go. And also, eventually, Pavel knows that he'll have to clear this, so he might as well get a head start.
Sure.
Eventually, Trump will put a Sun Fury Protector on that, put Taunt on it, and he's just getting it out of the way.
Yeah, here we go. Starting to get the draw train going.
Made to work.
Finally kill off this this Ancient Watcher, and Trump has no real follow-up threat on turn 5 unless he's willing to dump a couple of cards with his Doom Guard. And there's too many valuable cards.
Yeah. Well,
Huh.
the thing is, are the Molten Giants that valuable? Usually how this matchup works is the handlock never gets to the point where he can actually play the Molten Giants, and he just gets bursted down. But you really want to do something about this board because something like Whirlwind plus Battle Rage will just really be bad.
He already used 1 execute, so Doomguard has a high chance of staying alive, although Deathbite still answers it, and then you lost 2 cards. Healbot is not good, but it still puts something on the board and it challenges a little bit so that Mortal Coil can have value. And then the other option is tap to see if you can get anything good. If you tap into Mountain Giant, that'd be usually the answer. Oh, he loses Mal'Ganis.
Mal'Ganis is pretty huge, but I actually don't think he was too sad about losing the Molten Giant. Definitely the fact that Trump had the coin in his hand contributed to this Doomguard play as well.
Trump chooses the Gnomish Inventor, so he wants to minimize the damage taken.
And now Pavel has an awkward turn. Because of Trump's slightly risky turn with the Doomguard, Pavel really doesn't have much to do. He doesn't have as full a board, and it's just going to keep getting cleared and cleared all over again.
Absolutely. Second Healbot, not the greatest. But it does have some value finally, because you can heal back up to 30.
Shadow Flame not useful now, but
Yeah, that's great
eventually.
with the heal bot. Like you heal bot Shadow Flame onto a patron board because the patron, even though it won't win the game, it can position you to win the game sometimes.
Yeah, I just have to say, Pavel's patron draws have been pretty abysmal just over his last few games.
Oh gosh, second frothing is what you want to see at the end of all your chain draws. When you get the whirlwinds, you get the death spites. Again, another pass. Trump's been given so much time. Both players have floated 4 and 5 mana respectively over the past couple turns.
Well, that's a card at least that Trump can play if he draws dead yet again.
I mean, so is Antique Healbot as well. Both are perfectly fine, to be honest.
Yeah, you might just anti-heal bot here. Again, Molten Giants, not amazing at all.
That's pretty greedy from Trump, gotta admit.
Whirlwind slightly too late here, but he really needed that Whirlwind in order to combine it with the Battle Rage. It just seems like Pavel, he doesn't have too many cycles in this deck. You know what's missing in this deck? The slams.
Yeah,
Right?
he puts the Cruel Taskmasters instead of Slam.
And I feel like that hurts the matchup quite a bit. So it's slams and the Cruel Taskmasters instead of Loot Hoarders and... Wait, slams for Cruel Taskmasters and Loot Hoarders for Unstable Ghouls.
Correct.
I just feel like slams are just generally a bit better in the matchup. He also doesn't have the... He doesn't have any shield blocks in his deck, so that's slightly less cycles even.
All right, well, Trump does have many ways to deal with these patrons.
Does he?
Yeah.
How does he clear off these patrons, actually? It seems quite difficult.
I mean, you can... Is it really that dangerous to have a patron facing a taunt, you feel? So if he plays like Twilight Drake and Defender of Argus and then kills one of the patrons,
Yeah, fair enough.
it's like the patron by itself has to get through that taunt. I mean, it's the 3-2 in the face of a taunt is really no different than having like no mission Bender, right? It's just like a little bit of damage on the board. The challenge is if it can replicate itself
Yeah.
with the Whirlwind.
I think the key here is that Pavel hasn't used an Emperor Thorzen yet, so all of Pavel's cards are at the full mana cost, so he might not be too afraid. But if Trump is more afraid, then he should probably Shadow Flame here. The issue there is that if you just Shadow Flame, oh, he's not going to do it. He's going for the taunt play. But if you
Oh.
just Shadow Flame here, then you're weak to the second set of patrons because you don't have a second AoE.
Oh, it's so greedy, but it's completely the right play here because they can shut down both patrons now effectively.
Yeah, that was just the best case scenario. Even if he didn't draw that Iron Beak Owl, he could have just played the Sun Fury Protector anyway and gotten a pretty huge taunt. Like you said, one Execute is gone, so really hard to get past that 4-10 taunt wall, in addition to the Ancient Watcher taunt wall as well.
He can't even set up like a chain of Warsong Commander and Grim Patrons because the Ironbeak Owl is 2 damage, not 1. Otherwise, he could have delivered upwards to 9, 12 damage this turn. This gives an opportunity for Trump to trade in the Owl as well, so that way it doesn't become a liability for Whirlwind and other things.
I really like this play. A lot of newer players, I think, would have gone for the Whirlwind in this scenario because it just deals with the 1 HP creatures. But Whirlwinds are deceptively extremely useful in this matchup.
Sure.
Because you don't even run Unstable Ghouls, you basically
Oh.
need those Whirlwinds in order to buff up your Frothing Berserkers with the charges.
So he draws another Twilight Drake, which is even more health than the Molten Giant sitting in his hand. I was anticipating double Mortal Coil into Molten Sun Fury, but this is great. Do you think Trump would even coin Mortal Coil as 2-1?
I think you would coil the 2-1, but maybe at a later time. It's just you have these 5-11 taunts, 2 of them. You know one Execute is gone. You know he doesn't run Shield Slam, so
Right.
it's going to be nearly impossible to get past those taunts.
No Thorson either, so it's not like he can go for a big combo and then execute for 0. If he went for double Frothing, he would have to spend his 10th mana crystal to remove. Pavel, he doesn't have Brawl in his deck or anything to stabilize. Emperor Thorson is a great draw. Probably the best that he could have hoped for. 5, 10, 14, what is that, 23?
But you know what? That gives just Trump another target for that Mortal Quill, and he's able to trade in the 2 minions as well. So this is going to be probably the exact board that Trump wants. In addition to that, he can even double buff the double Twilight Drakes. So he can have 2, 6, 12 taunts. Patron's never going to get past that.
I wonder.
Yeah, he can play Molten finally, right?
Yeah, he can even do that.
Molten taunted up. Depends on what he draws as well. He might pick up like something else that he feels is just as good. I wonder if maybe he feels comfortable with just this and heals up as well.
You can even do Void Caller, Molten Giant. I guess that you can't fit a taunt in there.
No. I think we should start counting damage of what Pavel can do maximum damage. So the 2 Frothings, assuming there's 3 minions on the board. There's 6 damage per Whirlwind. You can only do it once. No, that's another 7 damage, but he just gained 8. I think this is pretty much out of reach, right?
Pavel just knows he has to go for it.
All right, so he's just going to try it and see if he can go for it. There's a lot of damage, though.
Yeah, it's really smart because you basically need to go for it right now or you'll rope out of the game. But I doubt this
Does
will
he
be enough
have it,
damage.
Mo? I mean, he just needs one of these Frothings to hit for 23.
Oh, man.
Did Trump overextend by putting Molten Giant onto the board?
By putting the heal bot onto the board, I think... I can't believe what's happening here, but this is a Patron Warrior we're talking about. I don't think he has it, though.
Are you sure? It's getting, like, really close. No, he has it.
Oh!
Oh, man, even squeezing in the Fiery War Axe hit.
What?
had it by
one
one
damage
over.
over. Wow.
No, 2 damage over. The Patron BN by hitting the...
Yeah. So I guess
There it is.
there's another Reddit video for you guys to share. First one to
Yeah.
post that up, get some free Reddit karma.
I think Trump could have just played another taunt, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
he played the Molten and the anti-heal
Heal bot.
bot, but he could have also taunted. So there's a lot of options at his disposal, even though it's very tempting to be like, Patron Warrior again. But that was Trump throwing away his opportunity. He got a little too confident.
Yeah, I think at that point, Trump was thinking, how can I lose this game? And
Yes.
he tried to play around that, but maybe not as efficiently as he could have. Almost certainly. You saw how much damage it took for him to get past those 6 or those 5 11 taunts. If he gotten one more taunt up, a 9/9 Molten Giant, that's almost certainly going to be enough because you only have 2 Frothing Berserkers. You have a lot of patrons to get past the first Twilight Drake. You have the Frothing Berserker to get past the second Twilight Drake. But do you need the third Frothing Berserker to get past the Molten Giant? Or you don't have anything to hit the face after that?
Right. To be fair, Pavel also had every card he needed at that point. He had 1 World Effect. He had 2 Patron as well as 2 Frothing Berserkers. So that was also really key. And the Inner Rage on the Grim Patron beforehand, that was the key. That was the key indeed. And now we have the Demon Handlock up against a regular Handlock, as well as a Hunter. And all of a sudden, Pavel might be in a pretty good position because the Handlock matches up pretty decently against the Demon Handlock, and so does the Hunter.
Yep. Typically, I want to say that the standard Handlock has an advantage depending on the number of Molten Giant or number of Mountain Giants in Trump's deck. But we already saw that Trump has 2 Mountain Giants in addition to his Demons. So he's going to be the one with the bigger deck. That means I would probably give Trump the advantage in this matchup as well.
Well, it depends on some of the tech cards, too. I mean, Trump does have those threats, but Pavel has the coin and the 2 Twilight Drakes. So I guess we'll find out to see if Trump can find those answers or if Pavel will go uncontested. That's a great draw, too. Having all of his big early game bombs.
Trump with the Mountain Giant of his own, and I think that just changes everything, especially with the turn 1 advantage.
Yes. So what happens is when you coin out the Twilight Drake, they become a 4/8 minion on board if you coin it out on turn 3. And that gets immediately challenged by the Mountain Giant. So if Pavel goes for this double Twilight Drake, which I imagine he's really thinking about it, then it gets immediately contested, and all of a sudden they're way less impactful.
Yeah. But Pablo is a really experienced player. I don't think he will do that. The other options are just to pass, to play the Ancient Watcher, and to maybe coin out a life tap. But this is going to be really punishing here.
Yeah, it's not going to end up very good for him unless he picks up Big Game Hunter,
which he's been known to do.
Poof! Dang, 2 Mountain Giants in a row, and Pavel's not happy to see that. Does not pick up the BGH. In fact, now that he might be forced to play Ancient Watcher and taunt that instead.
Shields up.
Taunts both.
Oh, it's interesting.
Okay. So he's taking a. Well, that's interesting. I think he's trying to see if if he can get value off the Sun Fury Protector before his opponent might have Owl and Mortal Coil. It could be one of those scenarios where maybe he had the response to Twilight Drake through the Owl, but he didn't want to miss his drop and be mana efficient, so he played his 8/8 instead. That's also a possibility. Now, Pavel's stuck in the very problematic form where he realized he doesn't have enough mana to play Mountain Giant, and because he spent this opportunity to get an early game board, he has to play Lotheb instead.
Yeah.
And Lotheb's not exactly great on this board.
It's just a large part of it was the turn 1 advantage of Trump is able to play the first big threat on his turn 4, unless Pablo coin out the Twilight Drake, but the Twilight Drake just matches up so poorly here. But it's a combination of that and also Pablo's decision to go with the Twilight Drake in this particular matchup.
I got
This is also a pretty great Emperor Thorson, because now you have a lot of really powerful cards cheaper. Molten Giant can just come down as if it's a Mountain Giant, so you can just tap Molten. Unless he has too many cards. No, he has too many cards, can't do that. Yes, you just Ancient Watcher Molten then, it's fine. Unless you feel like Void Caller is better, so you can get some Mal'Ganis tempo plays.
I don't think you necessarily need to throw out the Molten Giant this early. It seems like in a later turn you could probably get it for even cheaper. And we know Trump is all about the value, all about the greed.
That's true. You set yourself up for a Big Game Hunter swing, so you can tap and play Void Caller. I like that as well.
Ooh, Twilight Drake even. Trump has so many first world problems right now.
Well, let's think about it. If he just uses a Mortal Coil, then even if he silences it, he still has to Dark Bomb or have the second Mortal Coil, so it's unlikely.
Yeah. Whereas with just the silence, the Void Caller would essentially be neutered.
Yes. Okay, so your opponent tapped and played Mountain Giant. He's shown a Mortal Coil. He hasn't shown that he can deal with the Twilight Drake very effectively, because you would silence it. So maybe this is an opportunity for him to squeeze in Sylvanas.
Yeah, without a BGH, Sylvanas seems to be the best answer against this type of board. I'd also like to see some kind of taunt play on something that's not the Twilight Drake, because otherwise the Mountain Giant could just attack into the Twilight Drake, and then
I have
Shadow
no
Flame
time
would
for
spell
games.
big trouble.
Yes.
So Sun Fury on probably
Shields
the
up.
other 2 creatures.
Great analysis. And Pavel's still going to be looking for that silence effect.
Siphon Soul. Okay.
Well, it's useful against the Drake.
That actually really hurts for Pavel. No Dark Bombs, no Hellfires even.
He used 1 Hellfire, that's why. So, would you just kill the mountain, or use the Mountain Giant to collide into the Ancient Watcher and just kill the Twilight Drake just for the Siphon Soul? Seems reasonable. You take a lot of power off the board. Your Mountain Giant can't get stolen by Sylvanas. Of course, you open yourself up to just Dark Bomb, and Sylvanas keeps challenging the board.
Oh, that's gonna be key.
Jaraxxus.
Jaraxxus plus a 1-mana Dark Bomb?
That's huge. So normally you care about playing Jaraxxus after the Moltens, but Jaraxxus can come down first, and you have a pretty good hand to back it up. You've got more taunts, you can clear the board, you have a Sylvanas already preemptive there.
Yeah.
That could be the beginning of Trump's march to victory, although he also could feel his hand's not good enough, and he wants to save Jiraxis for even more opportune time.
Yeah, I think the Dark Bomb here is too tempting, and you can't really fit in the Jiraxis on this turn, but oh my.
2 Molten Giants. Now, what he needs to be careful is to not let his opponent Shadow Flame the board. He knows he can still Mountain Giant and then Shadow Flame. So he should be careful. Maybe play 1 Molten, then the Void Caller perhaps? No, the Void Caller would then pull Jiraxis, right?
I actually like playing both the Molten Giants because the next turn you can plan to Jiraxis. You have the initiative on board now, and if Pavel wants to deal with this board, he'll have to play a minion plus Shadow Flame. So he'll have to play like specifically a Mountain Giant plus Shadow Flame, and that will, or a Molten plus Shadow Flame, and that will take him 9 mana. So even if he clears the board, then you can Jiraxis the next turn, get
Sure.
the initiative there,
Gotcha.
and that's the best time to play that Jiraxis.
Fair enough. I just feel more comfortable playing Jiraxis when I know there's a taunt already existing and it's going to survive. Because then you have an opportunity to be defensive and be able to respond preemptively. Good stuff, though, all around if you're in Camp Trump, but if you're in Camp Pavel, floundering a little bit, you still have room to tap for a Shadow Flame, but I don't know. Maybe you just have to go for Big Threat and Big Game Hunter.
So many possibilities.
Big Game Hunter. Oh, a Healbot.
Healbot puts you to 23. Your opponent has 21.
Yeah,
And you're
this
going to
is-
kill off?
This is a really defensive play. It's the correct play because if Trump had Hellfire, Dark Bomb, anything, even Jiraxis, he would just lose. But this play also means that it's kind of like a losing play in a sense. In the sense
Right.
that you're not going to come back from this.
Yes, he lost too much board tempo by doing so, and now Trump's firmly, very decisively ahead.
I would just say go for the Jiraxis right now.
Yeah, there's nothing really stop. There's really no way for your opponent to kill you. You're going to be at the same amount of health anyways. Your opponent just showed you can't deal with threats.
And it also just fulfills your conditions, Dan, of having a big taunt.
Yes, protected. And it's Sylvanas nonetheless. That is one of the best bodyguards you can ever ask for. Trump debating if whether or not taking this extra damage is worth it so he can keep his board a little bit stronger. And I don't foresee 11 damage being that big of a difference between 12. I think you usually kind of threshold things by 3 against Handlock. There was a period of time, Monk, on ladder where, just like a couple weeks ago, where I saw a lot of people still running combo lock stuff. It was like just completely surprising. They kept playing Arcane Golem and Power Overwhelmings.
Yeah. I know you were a fan of Combo Lock at one time
I was.
during the good old Seat Story Cup days.
Yep.
The Seat Story Cup.
Yep.
How did that go for you, Dan?
Me and Savitz combined went 1-9 with that deck.
That sounds like a pretty good deck. So I'm sure Pavel would have considered it to bring to this tournament, but unfortunately he does not have that right now specifically.
Still no Shadow Flame. That's one of the unfortunate drawbacks of recent handlock innovations. The fact that Shadow Flame is not as common as it used to be in some decks.
Yeah, most people prefer that the Hellfire, and it's just Shadow Flame is so much better in this particular matchup.
Yep.
It's in fact back in the WCA days, a lot of players played 1 Shadow Flame, a lot of players played 2 Shadow Flame, and Handlock was really common. So in the Handlock mirrors, the player that had 2 Shadow Flames actually won a large majority of the time in that specific tournament.
I think this is lethal, by the way, 'cause Hellfire will steal the Twilight Drake. Then you can kind of hit the face and then Dark Bomb. So that's going to wrap it up. Trump should take this series 3-1 and advance to day number 3 with a 6-2 score. Very strong performance by Trump as he punches his ticket to the top 4.
Yeah, Trump and Kolento really showing off that it's the well-established players that are really dominating these days. Kolento with a 6-0 victory, Trump with a 6-2 victory as well. And Trump has really fulfilled his goal of getting first place in his group and not facing Kolento, a player that not only is everyone afraid of, but the decks that he's bringing are really kind of revolutionary, kind of untested by Trump as well. So he definitely wants to get more scouting info before he faces Kolento, possibly in the finals.
Absolutely. So job well done to Trump. Pavel is not finished yet. He'll face the winner of the lower match, which is going to be coming up on stream. We'll see if we can continue that momentum because, those guys who are in the lower match, they're not pushovers either. Wobster versus Hoy, either one of them might put up a pretty good fight against Pavel now that they know what the decks are.